All right.
Let's jump into the big topic, yeah?
Let's go, yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is going to be a topic that's going to be on every episode of the podcast. You and I, when we were starting to like conceive of this idea.
Ideate?
Ideate?
It's a word that's terrible.
I hate that word. It's so corporate. But we were trying to let's just start writing a list of Nintendo Storytime topics and see what happens. I think we're up to like 150.
We got a lot.
Something crazy, like ridiculous. And there's still more that come to mind all the time. Yeah, no end to this wellspring of stories, for sure. But today we wanted to talk about something that we've just gotten so many questions, and for good reason, which is why in the world would we leave our dream jobs at Nintendo? Like, what actually happened? It happened really fast. It was like a lot.
How did we get to here?
How do we get to here? How do we feel about it? That's not something that we've talked about. Is like, yeah, the facts are there, certainly, but we have not talked about like how we felt about it and like all the gamut of emotions that like we ran through to get to where we are today. So that's what we're gonna dig into that today.
Good.
Yeah. So let's rewind the clock.
Right. So where should we go back to?
Back to September of 2021.
Yeah, September of 2021. Right. Yeah. So we got the news that so. We should say Nintendo headquarters is in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle.
Yes.
We are not in that office. We were not in that office.
Yeah.
We were in Redwood City, California.
And that is the entire sales and marketing office for Nintendo of America.
Right.
They had moved that office to California 14 years ago.
Yeah, you were one of the first people there.
First people there. And we'll go into that in a different thing. So we were basically in like a, they call it like a satellite office, right?
Right. And we got the news that office was going to be closing.
Yeah.
And
very shocking news, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that we were going to be asked to relocate up to Redmond.
Yeah.
And I'd say that was something where I give the company credit was everybody who wanted to go could go.
Yeah. They were gonna they were doing great things to help relocate people.
Accommodating for all of that.
Yeah. And there were definitely people where they were happy to move and happy to do it, and it made sense for them. So
yeah, there were totally people who'd been thinking about it.
Yeah.
And for them, it was probably like
perfect timing.
A very happy day.
So it was like definitely when we were talking to people that we worked with for so many years, our friends, it was like two sides of this very emotional time. People that were happy that they were able to move and go to Redmond, and people that were struggling because it was a big like life change, So it was interesting, like an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, so you said you didn't expect it would ever happen. On one hand, I didn't, because that had happened once before, moving everybody down here to California.
Yeah.
And you just heard like, oh, that was such a difficult thing. Like people really struggled with that, and they lost
talent.
so many great people who'd been with the company for so long. So on that side, it's like, well, maybe they wouldn't want to go through that again. They know the turmoil that can bring. But on the other hand, it's like, well, they have it in them to do that
to
sort
do
of
kinds
thing.
of things like
to
this.
just like rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like sort of, at first it was shocking, and then again you think about it and you're like, well, the reason why I had gotten the job at Nintendo in the first place was because they moved to California. So it's like, well, now it's like the reverse of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they also, we were in a pandemic. There was a lot of changes just overall to companies all over the world of how what working is going to be like. And so surely these are thoughts that I'm sure cross the minds of people that were making this decision. So, and it definitely, timing-wise, it seemed to be also catalyzed by that a little bit too.
Now, I had been through one of these office closures before.
You have! This is like your second time around on this. So we're like, I closed this office?
We should say, we're recording this in a bedroom in your mom's house, right?
My mom just like kicks you out. She's like, get out.
I mean, your mom could just emerge at any moment.
With like tea.
Yeah. How's it going?
We affectionately call this the launch house.
So, So first of all, thank you to Krysta's mom for having us.
Thank you, Mom. We love you.
But yeah, so I worked 2 jobs before Nintendo at Konami.
Right.
Back when Konami was still doing video games and not pachinko nonsense.
Gyms.
So, yeah, it was the same thing where, most of the people doing sales and marketing this was like 2 blocks actually away from the Nintendo office.
That's true. It was like the
makes
same like weird office
even funnier.
park.
And it was like, yeah, we want everybody to move to LA, and it was the same deal where like very few people actually went through with it. So these moves are dicey.
They are very dicey. Yeah.
So I kind of knew, what to expect as far as how people were going to take the news.
Because you were so like great to everyone that was like really struggling. Like you led the entire, social original content influencer team. It was a big team that you were like heading up, and there are some people that really had a really hard time, and like at least because you went through it once, you were able to like share some perspective for people that were like really just having just the hardest time kind of coming to grips with it.
And I think it's like it truly is like getting, difficult life news.
It is.
And it's like every day you are going to look at this a little differently and think about this a little differently. So don't like make a snap judgment or a snap decision.
Because you're like going through like the stages of grief or whatever it is, because it's like I'm angry and then like I accept this and then
totally
like,
there's all these other ones
and then it's like and there's like all these different things. Like one day you feel really emotional about it, and at least for me I was just like up and down on this like emotional roller coaster for months, for a couple months, trying to figure out what my next move was going to be.
Right. For me though, it was like very just immediate of like, I'm not going to be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, recording my mom's house, but both our families are here. We grew up in the Bay Area. This is the place that we love to live. And the other thing too, like for me personally, and you and I talked about this a lot, is like as much as we love Nintendo, and we truly, truly do, and we really enjoyed our time and the experience we had working there, like it's still a job. Right?
Yeah.
And you just don't want like a big corporation or a job to dictate your life. Like that part was so important to me.
It's amazing because so we have summer interns. We had a absolutely phenomenal summer intern, Sarah. I'll give her a shout out.
Yeah, love you, Sarah.
And before she left at the end of the summer, she asked me a question that was like almost exactly the same as what happened. Maybe she knew.
Sarah.
And it was like, would you ever move for a job? And I think she was just, thinking scenarios for her own future. And I said, well, no, I really wouldn't want to do that because, I don't want a job to dictate that much of my life.
Exactly.
A job is a big part of your life, but it's not everything.
Your whole life, right.
And I think there's a lot of scenarios where a job could take you to maybe, again, a place you've been curious about or expose you to something that you've been curious about, but that's not what it is for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And you should be dictating that for your life, not this, business. Because at the end of the day, it's still a business relationship that you have between you and this job that you're working at, right?
Yeah.
So that part was really important to us. Like we just had that, like both of us really very quickly when this news was shared with us, we had like this boundary that we drew. That was pretty like, we're not going to cross this boundary, personally. Yeah. But I mean, everyone's, of course, free to make your own decisions about what you want to do with your life. But like for us, I'm glad that we agreed because it would have been really bad if one person was like, so I'm moving to Seattle, see you later, this friendship is over.
We're doing auditions for the new Nintendo Minute host. It ain't gonna be you.
It's not gonna be you. Oh my god, that's an awful, like, this is like a parallel universe scenario that this is like a Loki universe that I don't want any part of. No, thank you.
The other thing that's interesting is like, so you mentioned like, we're still in this pandemic, and I think for a lot of people, especially early on, the pandemic was this like eye-opening experience to see like, well, what is important to me and what do I want to prioritize in my life? And you saw people, this great resignation that started.
Yeah.
And all these people started to move jobs and leave jobs. And I think, the Nintendo perspective was, I think the company did a good job of trying to keep people feeling very stable. Mm-hmm. We were in the middle of a huge launch. Animal Crossing was coming out.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah. We were canceling events. It was amazing.
It was a lot of turmoil. We should talk about that because we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary. But I think a lot of people at Nintendo didn't have that same viewpoint where I need to reevaluate my life because it just felt like, we're still working, but we're working from home. But there wasn't this insane sense of instability that I think a lot of other people felt.
That's right, yeah.
But this was kind of the crack where you had that moment.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, this is my opportunity to think bigger picture.
That's exactly what happened. I think that's like, and for both of us too, is like we've been, at this job for, over a decade.
Yeah.
You think about like your life overall and what percentage you're at now, and how much of that was at one place, at one, in one sort of environment. And then you wonder like what else is out there for me, and when is it the right time for me to make this leap to do something completely different. Like I call it like leaving the nest, because I really did grow up at Nintendo.
Yeah.
And it just feels like, either you get pushed out of the nest or you leave the nest, and it's your opportunity to like fly or not fly, So that was definitely like one of those things where it's like, is this like a sign from the universe or something that like we should move on and do something else and just be brave and just go for it? That was definitely a thought that we had. We, again, talked to a lot of people about this and got great advice from people that we really admired. But yeah, that was something that definitely came out from this whole like situation.
Yeah. And something that's really amazing about Nintendo is how many people stay there for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we're 13, 14 years, and people will be like, whatever.
No problem.
I'm like 25, like, 28 years.
There's somebody on our team that was that past 35 years.
Right. So, I think that a lot of people have that mindset of like, well, this is a great place, and I love it here, and I'm going to work here long term. And I know you had a few more close calls than I did, but there's definitely scenarios where it's like, yeah, I'd love to keep working here and have a great time here. But again, that window opening did give you a chance to reflect. And one of the things that I thought was just like, gosh, I don't know what else I have to really accomplish here that I haven't already done. I mean, I guess you always climb the corporate ladder.
Yeah, that was something that you and I were both never very interested in, I don't think.
Right. But I mean, those jobs, sound cool, but we've seen those jobs in action, and they're very hard and very
challenging,
extremely demanding.
Yeah.
And I think we both like to really get our hands dirty and do stuff and make stuff.
Yeah, we want to be like in with you guys.
And it's just kind of a reality of like, as you climb that thing,
still a corporation,
it becomes harder to do that.
Yeah, you get like more and more sort of disconnected, and you have to sit in these really, really big important meetings, and you sort of get removed from the things that you love to do, right? Yeah,
so, for me, again, had that really immediate just, feeling, I guess I didn't follow my own advice. I was like, don't make any snap. I mean, I totally made a snap judgment.
You didn't, though. You didn't, because you still thought about it.
I don't need to follow my own advice. Everybody else does.
That's the way to go.
That's the American way. So I was like, oh gosh, I guess I could better start looking at these jobs. And it's like, oh gosh, I really don't.
You were like very hesitant to even like make a resume.
I don't have a resume. It's like the resume I have is from like 14 years ago when I, signed on at Nintendo.
Nintendo.
Again, I never looked for a job when I was unlike you, when I was at Nintendo. So it was like, oh gosh, that whole
it's a terrible process.
Rigmarole just doesn't sound fun. Yeah. So I think that's where we started to talk like, oh, maybe we could do something just the two of us.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too, of course, and I think we got a bit of a question about this too, is like the creative freedom, like of course at Nintendo we were like very uniquely lucky. So
we actually had quite a bit of it compared to some other things.
Compared to like a lot of other people too. So I can't complain about that. Yeah. But again, at the end of the day, you're still like working for a brand. Like, right. There is certain things that you can and cannot do.
Certain lines you can't cross.
Lines that you can't cross. There's parts of ourselves that we basically had to like, not like suppress, but we didn't share them with you guys because we weren't able to.
Yeah. So what we shared in Nintendo Minute was absolutely us, but it was not all of us.
Exactly. It was like the Nintendo part of us. But like, people always, they were like, you have an Xbox? Like you, like, yes.
Yeah, so like I'm super happy that I never had to say like, gosh, I love this Sonic the Hedgehog game. Well, I'm sure we'll come to that bridge later. We just wouldn't do that.
We just wouldn't put it on the show.
Like, well, there's one game I don't like and a whole bunch I do. Which one am I going to talk about?
Exactly.
The one I like.
Yeah, exactly. So it's super, it's interesting the way that we sort of had to kind of carve out a piece of our authentic selves that was under like the Nintendo, that was like Nintendo brand, approved, checkmarked. But there was also like another percentage of our authentic selves that we just never were able to we just never were able to share with you guys as much. So like that part of it with this now, like we can just have it all.
Yeah.
100%, whether you like it or not.
But that was, again, we mentioned all the people that we spoke with to get advice.
Yeah.
And they were all like, they're like, yeah, obviously you should do this. Right. And I don't think our mind was there.
Yeah. We were like,
really? Really? You think we could do this? You think people care? And I think there's still like a part of our mind. It's like, nobody cares. But that was such an important push over the cliff to be like, no, you should really do that. You'd be silly not to.
Right. And we were like, oh, okay, this is like something obvious that we didn't put together. But yeah, I think now that we are doing this, again, too late now. So we're locked in.
Hit the stop button.
We're locked in. But it's like, when I think about it, like we do really have a unique perspective on like the video game industry.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of people that have been deeply, deeply inside one of the biggest video game companies in the world, like worked as closely as we did on so many like historically critical moments in the industry.
Yeah, and with people who are historically critical.
Yeah, and then now we can like have this really different perspective on the video game industry as a whole too. So now it's just like, yeah, that is different and cool. And I want to talk about it.
Yeah. So it's like, when you go from one job to the next, you're bringing all of your sort of experience and skills and knowledge and moving up, and that's kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just excited. I think, it's always going to be part of our history, our time at Nintendo, like all the stuff that we did, but we're excited to like move forward and use that to like take us to like new places and have different experiences too.
Right. And we've also talked a lot about like, well, what do you think the folks who are at Nintendo think about us doing this?
Yeah. We love you guys. Don't be scared.
We're on great terms with everybody there.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're here to like, say bad things about the company.
There's no bad things. Or
tell the secrets. We're absolutely not doing that. It's like, I think we're, we have our stories to tell, but the great thing is they're pretty much very positive and
and they're our own stories. There are memories and perspectives on things that happen to us personally. So, I would say that is sort of a nice way for us to share this with you, is that obviously it's not going to be like, this is what the company experience is like for everybody working there or whatever. It's just like our personal experience.
Yeah. So I have to imagine there's a high degree of curiosity about it. But, hopefully nobody's concerned because it's really nothing to be worried about.
Exactly.
At all.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's it. I think that kind of covers. Yeah. That's the full story. And then, so Kit and I left.
So that was September to with December. We did the last episode of Nintendo Minute. Your last day was middle January. Mine was a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
And then here we are.
It happened. The timeline was pretty fast. And ending Nintendo Minute was incredibly, like, emotional for us. I think a lot of you guys saw in my face in that video. I was trying not to cry. But it was like one of those moments where you're like, this is the closing of this chapter, and now we're going to move on to this new thing, and that was incredibly exciting too. So like as we like moved into this new year, we were like both so like just so stoked to start this thing and like kind of cleanly end our chapters working at Nintendo, and so it worked out really well, I think, time-wise for us.
I'd of course had the morbid thought of like, oh gosh, one day Nintendo Minute's gonna have to end, and what's that gonna be like, and oh, that's gonna be really awful. But I think the scenario that we had was actually like the best case scenario because we got to end it on a high note, kind of in a way that we wanted. And by that time,
and together,
we were both really certain that we were going to do this other thing together. So it's like, all right, well, this is a chapter that we're closing the book on, but we're very close to starting the next chapter. So there's not that sense of like, oh, this is really the end.
Yeah, like this huge loss kind of thing. Yeah, it definitely was like, because we had basically grew up in that studio together, and when you make 429 episodes or something, it's going to be a little sad when you shoot the last episode. But surely it was like the perfect timing for us because we were pretty much going to be, we knew we were going to be ready to go, in January, February. So
right,
here we are.
All right.
There you go. That's the P.
Boom.